Today, we're talking about how businesses can win with AI. Many leaders think winning with AI means having their team learn prompting and maybe adding AI agents and chatbots to things. But that's surface level. The real winners are rebuilding how their businesses operate from top to bottom, turning data, AI algorithms, and automation into engines for growth and advantage. My name is Joshua Ebner. I've spent over 20 years in the AI, machine learning, and data science industry, helping companies drive growth and ROI using data and AI. So, in this video, I'll show you the playbook for how the best companies use AI and data, how they think, where they invest, and how they build systems that compound advantage over time. So, let's start with the big picture. AI is no longer just a way to gain an edge, it's about survival. So, the first major point, and this is kind of big picture, but it's really important to understand. AI first companies are going to beat their competitors and dominate their industries. Many business leaders don't see this yet, but there are ways to use artificial intelligence to improve almost every part of your business. Whether you're talking about customer acquisition, conversion, customer retention, operations, cost reduction, across the board in a business, there are tools that you can use to optimize almost everything. The companies that get this right are going to have way bigger advantages in terms of growing revenue and growing revenue with higher profits and higher cash flows. The businesses that don't are simply going to get left in the dust. We actually already know what this looks like. The next 10 or 20 years are actually going to look like the last 10 or 20 years. What do I mean? Over the last 10 or 20 years, the biggest winners, especially the big FAANG companies, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Google, Netflix, and also major SaaS companies, large banks that kind of beat their competitors, they invested heavily in the previous wave of artificial intelligence and data science. Almost all of those FAANG companies in particular were huge early adopters of the previous wave of AI. We call that machine learning. Things like predictive models, recommendation systems, and other types of older AI, which, by the way, we're going to talk about this. Those things are still extremely useful. But all of those companies that won big and crushed their competitors, they understood the power of data and automated intelligence. This new era that we're moving into is very much like that past 10 or 20-year cycle, except we now have new tools, namely large language models and AI agents. We're going to get to that stuff in a second. But this is something that I need you to internalize. The best performing companies over the next couple of decades are going to be the ones that leverage AI and data the most effectively. Now, what I said just a moment ago about there being different types of AI and how some of the previous forms of AI used over the last 10 or 20 years, how they're still very powerful, that actually brings us to my next major point. By the way, if you want to understand how ready your business is to use AI to maximum effect, take my AI readiness assessment. You can find the link in the description, click on the link. It'll only take you a few minutes and it will tell you how ready your business is to use AI across 4 different domains. Click on the link and take the AI readiness assessment. If you want to win in the AI era, you need to understand that AI isn't one thing, AI is a toolkit. Let me explain. So, currently, a lot of business leaders, when they talk about AI, they treat AI as being synonymous with large language models, things like ChatGPT and Claude. I understand if that's your mindset, but that's kind of incorrect. There are actually multiple different types of AI, and large language models are really only one type. So let me kind of lay out the toolkit right now. First, you have generative AI. That includes things like large language models, ChatGPT. Those are primarily text based generative AI. You also have image generators now and video generators. Those are also generative. They work in sort of a similar way, but we can bucket those into one broad category, generative. Second, we have predictive AI. Now, you can use large language models for certain types of prediction, but there are some classic machine learning techniques that are actually much better. So, anytime you need to make some sort of prediction, whether that's forecasting some number, maybe forecasting demand, forecasting sales numbers, if you're trying to make a prediction about customer behavior, things like whether a person is going to churn or upgrade to a higher service level, we would call that a upgrade propensity model or a churn model. Anytime you're going to forecast some number or predict some customer behavior, you're typically going to use predictive AI. and it's a different set of tools. You're typically not going to use a large language model. You'll use, as I said, classic machine learning techniques like decision trees, regression models, linear regression. You can also use some things like neural networks under certain circumstances. The exact tool that you use is going to depend on the use case. But what I want you to understand is if you are trying to make predictions, you're not going to use a large language model 95% of the time. You're going to use a different type of AI. Number three, we have what I call exploratory AI. That's just a clever name for something in the industry we call unsupervised learning. Essentially, with this type of AI, you're trying to find patterns in data. This can be extremely useful for strategic purposes. Let's say if you're doing product strategy or marketing strategy, you can use this type of exploratory AI to explore your data, uncover previously unknown patterns, and then use that for strategic purposes. We very commonly see this with go to market. And then finally, you have AI agents. Now, I will say that AI agents are built on top of large language models for the most part. In an AI agent, an LLM acts as a sort of reasoning or thinking engine at the center. And then we connect other tools to the agent, things like databases for memory management, document stores, APIs, external software, other things. And that extends the ability of a large language model and gives it more capacity. And if you build it right, it has a certain level of autonomy such that it can do work. Now, AI agents are kind of an entirely separate conversation. They're somewhat complex to build, but this is an emerging type of AI that I think is going to be very powerful over the next 10 years. But if you want to try and solve every business problem with an AI agent, it's probably not going to work very well. What I'm trying to emphasize here is that there are many different types of AI tools. And as a business leader, you need to understand when to use which tool to solve a particular problem. But if you're strictly thinking in terms of tools, your AI projects are probably still going to fail from a business perspective. And that brings us to our next point. You need to match your AI projects to business levers. So, a major issue that I'm seeing right now with many businesses and business leaders is they're thinking strictly in terms of tools. This is especially the case with respect to LLMs and agents. People are so excited about large language models and agents that they want to use AI agents for everything. Instead, before you even talk about tools, you need to start thinking about your business problems. So, arguably, the first step or one of the first couple of steps in any AI project is asking, what problems are we actually trying to solve? Or maybe alternatively, what are the biggest problems that we face right now that, if we solved them, would generate the most business value? So, you need to think like a business strategist every bit as much as thinking like an AI strategist. So, a couple of broad questions here. Think through, how do we improve revenue? What things are going on in your business that are either working really well to drive revenue that you might want to double down on, or where are you losing revenue? So, in many cases, many businesses have a churn problem that is a big leak in their revenue bucket. If that's the case, you're going to want to fix churn. You can also think about costs. Where are your biggest costs? Are there any opportunities to decrease costs or increase efficiency and productivity such that you can decrease your costs? You can ask, do you have a problem with either brand or customer satisfaction? Brand and customer satisfaction, by the way, are actually upstream of a lot of other things. So if you have a brand problem or a customer sat problem, you're typically going to see that downstream in your retention numbers, customer acquisition numbers, and your cart values or customer lifetime value numbers. Any of these things could potentially be a problem in your business, and you want to identify those problems first. Then you go, after you identify the problems, then you go to find the possible AI techniques that can solve those problems. Predictable return on investment comes from aligning AI to real business levers. But even if you are identifying the right problems and identifying the right AI tools to solve those problems, you're going to need at least one key ingredient to apply those AI techniques, and that's data. Data is the foundation of almost all modern AI, whether you're talking about LLMs or predictive techniques, exploratory AI, even AI agents. All of these things either use AI when you build them or they benefit from having access to data in order to perform better. Even with a large language model or an AI agent, if you want to get maximal benefit inside of a business use case from one of those tools, you typically need to connect a large language model to internal databases or document stores. Same thing with an AI agent. They will benefit tremendously from having access to additional data. That data provides additional context or information that helps LLMs and agents reason through problems. And if you're building a predictive model or an exploratory AI system, those things are trained with data examples. So if you want to win with AI, you need to start thinking about your data foundations. That means having clean data, labeled data. Data labeling is its own topic in and of itself, but data labels are essential for training AI and machine learning systems in many cases. So your data needs to be clean, labeled, centralized, or at least available to your developers in some sort of database or a document store, etc. You'll also need to think about how you are measuring and instrumenting your technology applications and your processes such that you can be collecting data from things like your operations and your customer interactions across the board. The more data you can collect, for the most part, the better off you're going to be once you start building and scaling your AI. Still, even if you have the right data, you're still going to need people that know how to use that data correctly. That brings us to our next point. If you want to win with AI, you're going to need hybrid AI teams. So, what I mean by this is you're going to need teams of people with the appropriate AI and data and subject matter expertise such that you can apply these AI tools and techniques properly. One thing that I want to point out here is you're not necessarily looking for a single AI unicorn, a person that can do it all. In many cases, it takes teams of people to be able to cover all of these different areas of expertise. It is extremely rare to find a person that has subject matter expertise in the domain of the problem you're trying to solve and has AI knowledge, machine learning knowledge, data expertise, and business acumen. It's extraordinarily rare. So, a better way of thinking about this is in terms of building teams of people, almost like building a baseball team. A baseball team has people that can hit really well, that can catch really well. You have some people that are highly specialized in catching a baseball, the catcher. You have people that are highly specialized in pitching a baseball, the pitcher. You have people that are kind of good at multiple things, like maybe a shortstop, and so on. AI teams are very similar. Now, I've kind of suggested some areas already, but let me kind of lay this out. You will need people that have data expertise. We typically call these people data engineers. You're going to need some people that have expertise in AI and machine learning. Those things are largely related. Many people kind of miss this fact, but modern AI is a type of machine learning for the most part. So if a person says they're an AI expert, but they don't have any machine learning expertise, it's a bit of a red flag. Your AI experts should understand classic machine learning techniques and concepts. Almost all of that stuff is frequently applicable once you start building out AI systems as well. They should, however, they should have expertise in certain types of modern AI techniques, things like LLMs, transformer architectures, agentic architectures, and things like that. You'll also need some deployment talent. Sometimes your AI and machine learning experts have this talent as well, but deployment is sort of its own thing. So if you start really building an AI centric business, you're probably going to need additional people that are a little more specialized in deploying AI and machine learning systems. We typically call this machine learning ops or AI ops. You'll also need subject matter experts. As I said, this is frequently forgotten, but subject matter experts are maybe one of the most important members of an AI team. And the reason is that they understand the problem space better than anyone else. If you are trying to solve a churn problem, your marketing experts are going to understand customer wants and needs and desires. They will understand that customer data better than almost anyone else. So your data teams and your machine learning and AI teams will need to work with your subject matter experts to understand that data and then build out the system. Your subject matter experts are also going to help validate that the AI system works properly, creating evaluation systems and benchmarks. And finally, as you're building out your hybrid AI team, you're going to need some business leaders, but business leaders that understand how AI actually works. A big problem in modern organizations that want to use AI is that the people at the highest levels frequently don't understand how AI works. So they have unrealistic expectations, or, and I said this previously, they insist on trying to use the wrong tools to solve problems. So, very commonly right now, I'm seeing C suite executives and VPs saying, let's build an AI agent, when in fact, they probably need exploratory AI like segmentation models and maybe some predictive tools, and maybe even some classic data analytics. In many cases, these are much better solutions and probably a little bit less expensive. But if your business leaders don't know that, they might be making the wrong decisions. So you need business leaders that, at the very least, understand AI concepts and the variety of different tools and how those tools are used in different business use cases. But even if you have a great AI team that understands data and AI use cases, you'll still need something else to win with AI. You'll need leaders that can think strategically about applying AI techniques. The framework that I've used in the past for thinking strategically, I actually have a term for this. I call it think like Bezos, Jeff Bezos. In Amazon, where they're trying to use technology strategically, they frequently use very small bets, or at the very least, they are scaling the size of their bet on a particular new tool or new technique. They're scaling the size of their bet to their certainty that it's going to pay off. And when you're using a new tool or technology, there's often a lot of uncertainty. So typically, Bezos and executives at Amazon, they start with relatively small bets. They're just trying to figure out, does this work on a small scale? Can we prove that it drives some particular metric? And they're also trying to get more information by starting with a small bet, a small prototype that gets more information for the team. And then from there, once you get that information from a small prototype, you can make much better decisions. If the prototype works, you scale it out. If the prototype doesn't work, you kill it. There are other strategic frameworks that I recommend. I've talked about these in other videos, but very briefly, as you are brainstorming or identifying various use cases, something that I talked about a couple of minutes ago, once you figure out those use cases, you're trying to understand, okay, how difficult or expensive will this be to build? And then what's the relative ROI? Now, again, that is usually somewhat uncertain upfront. You'll be able to better analyze those things, though, if you build out a great AI team. We just talked about that a minute or two ago. That will help you better evaluate your use cases for cost and ROI upfront. But as I said, building out a prototype first is going to help you get more certainty about those early cost and ROI estimates. And that will help you figure out whether or not a use case is viable, valuable, etc. And once you have your data and your AI team, your people, and you're thinking strategically about AI use cases, you're going to be able to build a company and a system that compounds advantage over time. And that brings us to my final point on how to win with AI. You want to build an AI data flywheel. Let me explain. The end game here is ultimately creating a sort of self reinforcing system. You collect data, and that data enables you to build AI systems. Those AI systems improve customer acquisition, customer retention, and customer satisfaction. And higher retention and customer sat and customer acquisition, that enables you to acquire more customers. More customers is going to give you access to more data, assuming that you're instrumenting your processes and product correctly. So, what you get is this loop between data and AI and customer acquisition that goes faster and faster as long as you build it properly. This is what I call the AI data flywheel. And if you do this correctly, you will be able to build a company that your competitors cannot match. So, companies that win with AI are going to treat AI as a system that compounds advantage over time. But there's one particular area where AI is creating maybe the biggest impact right now, and that's revenue growth. So, in this next video, I'll explain how the best companies are using AI tools and techniques to grow their top line revenue. You can check it out here: how to increase revenue with AI.